Okay, all right everyone, welcome to the Edit Bay. Got another Final Cut Pro video. This one is not necessarily diving into the nuts and bolts of Final Cut Pro, but we are going to dive in today and do some updates to my Final Cut Pro library template as well as my Finder folder template. If you're scratching your head a little bit, what the heck's a Final Cut Pro library template and a Finder folder template? I'm going to get you up to speed here in just a minute. So for those of you who know this process, you can skip to the next chapter where we're actually starting to update the Final Cut Pro library template. For those of you who are going, yeah, I'd like to know more about this, well, sit tight. I'm going to go into what I do when I get done with shooting a video and how I set up my Final Cut Pro library template and my Finder folder template. So let's get into it. All right, so we've got Final Cut Pro open. I'm actually going to switch to Finder. Now in Finder, I always have at least two Finder windows open. I'm also in column view. I personally am kind of ride or die column view. I think it's the easiest view to use to get an understanding of where your stuff is, the path that you need to take to get to your media, and copying back and forth from one Finder window to another, which is an important step in this process. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go to the folder where all of my YouTube videos reside, and that's in the movies folder on my Mac. I have an M1 Mac Studio, and all of my active projects are stored there on the internal 2 terabyte hard drive. So you can see here I've got a few of the channels that I have. I've got my YouTube channel, my second photo channel, and then a podcast channel. I'm going to go into YouTube, and you can see here I've got a bunch of folders that show all of the stuff that I use to make my videos. But then down here, I actually have all of my videos listed out. So I'm going to start a new folder. It's going to be episode 278, and then I'm going to do the date, which is 2025-4, and then this is a video about FCP library templates, and also Finder templates, but we'll just keep the title brief so it's a little bit easier to use. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the YouTube folder in my second Finder window, and you can see here I have a Finder folder template for my YouTube videos. This is a series of folders where I'm going to store all my media. Now, some of you might be going, well, I just create these new folders right off the bat. Video, maybe finals, maybe you have stills, maybe there's AI stuff that you're using, and you make those folders brand new every time you start a new video. That to me is tedious, it's repetitive, and it's honestly a waste of time. So let's go ahead and delete those, and I'll show you how I use my Finder template. So in here, I've got a series of folders. They all have a number in front of them so that they go in the order with which I flow through my video making process. I've got a documents folder, which has subfolders for notes and a script. Project files, this is where I store my Final Cut Pro library template, as well as any Logic Pro files I'm using. I'm recording my voiceover right now with Logic Pro with this microphone so I can bring it into Final Cut and sync it to the video files when I'm ready to start editing. And then media, I've got audio, content. Don't worry about content. That's just a special term that I use for certain projects that I do. There's film or video you could use, graphics, screen recordings, and stills. And then I have my thumb folders for all the stuff that I use when I'm making a thumbnail, which may contain a raw photograph, and then other assets. And then my finals folder, which is where I export clips from my finished video or the actual finished video itself. So all of these folders are organized and ready to go, and I don't have to make them from scratch every time. So I'm going to simply select them all, and there's a couple of different ways that you can get this over to your other folder. You can press and hold Option and click and drag, and then they're all ready to go. Or we can just hit Command-C and then Command-V and paste them over. And now all of my Finder folder organization is ready to go. I'm ready to start the import process. So let's say I've got an SD card connected like I do here, and in there I've got a bunch of footage, right? I took some footage of this camera for my photography channel, and I'll link that channel down below. I was shooting with this Canon PowerShot ELPH100HS, and I have all these video files. So I'm going to navigate to my media folder, film, and then A-roll. I'm going to call this A-roll because for that channel, the footage of the camera is my A-roll. Normally your A-roll is this. It's me talking to camera. I'm going to select all these, and then I'm just going to drag it to the A-roll folder. Now that's going to take a little while to copy, but you can see already I've gone from the memory card, where my footage is, to the folder that corresponds to that footage ready to go in Finder, and I'll be able to open my Final Cut library and then import that footage there. I didn't have to go in and create all of these folders. Now, while that's copying, I'm going to go here to my Final Cut library, and I'm going to rename this what my project is, which is FCP Library Templates. FCP Library Template. Actually, I'm going to call this Library Template Update. Okay. Now, this is an existing Final Cut library that when I open it, it's going to ask me to update it because it's compatible with an older version of Final Cut Pro. That's perfectly normal. And inside the Final Cut library, you're going to see all kinds of folder structures that are similar to this. But again, Final Cut is events, folders, keyword collections, smart collections, etc. So let's go ahead and open this, and I'll double click it, and you can see we're prompted to update it. The Final Cut Pro library template that I sell on my website, I believe is compatible all the way back to version 10.6 of Final Cut Pro. So if you're someone that's using an older version of Final Cut, don't feel like you can't purchase that template because it might not be compatible because it's made with version 11 or version 10.9. It's compatible all the way back to version 10.6, I'm pretty sure. So I'm going to hit update. And now you can see this is all containing events that correspond to the organization that I do in my media folder in Finder. So you can see we've got a project folder, which has all of my pre-made timelines that I use to make my Final Cut videos. You've got a footage folder, and if I caret these down, you can see we've got all kinds of organization inside these folders. And this is part of what we're going to be updating today. I've got a list of things that I need to add to this template so that it better reflects the projects that I'm working on. And I'll go through that list of things we're going to update. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back to my original Final Cut Pro library template in Finder from this YouTube template. I want to update this template so that when I copy and paste it into any new video project I'm working on, this template file is updated with all the new things I want it to contain. So I'm going to double click this one, and it's going to prompt me to update. And you can see very similar to the one I just opened, we've got all of this stuff in here that helps keep me organized. And in my notes here, I've got a few things that I'm going to add. I'm going to do some work on my roles. I'm going to do some work on sound effects keyword collection. I'm going to add a few projects that are going to help me to add effects to my dialogue audio and create thumbnails from the footage in my videos. And I'm going to build a film grain background effect that I use in all my videos, but right now I'm opening old libraries, copying and pasting it over to a new library, and it's just a little bit unnecessary. And then I have some end credits titles that I use for every video, and I want that in my template as well. So let's start with customizing some roles. So because this library template is empty, I've got to do a little trickery to get access to my audio roles. So I'm going to open a project and then tap on the timeline index and go to roles, and then edit roles. And there's probably other ways you can get to it. This is just the way that I'm doing it. So I want to add some audio roles so that every time I start a new project, these audio roles are already there. The first one I'm going to add is a voiceover audio role. The next one I'm going to add is in relationship to the sound effects that I use from lens distortions to do sound design work in my videos. So I'm going to add another role that says hits, another role that says risers, and another role that says undertones. Now, if I want to customize these colors within the limitations of the colors that are available through Apple, I can do that. I'm going to make undertones purple, risers in green is fine for me, and then hits, I'm going to make this maybe a different color, like maybe that light blue color. I'm also going to add some video stills, one for B-roll. I'm going to add one for AI material that I might add to my videos, like a still image or an animated still image that was generated by artificial intelligence sites. So I'm going to hit apply. And again, now every time I copy this Final Cut library template into a new video project, all of those roles are going to be there. I don't have to create them or set them up every time I make a new video. Now, in my sound effects, I want this to be reflective of what I have in my roles. So I'm going to go do hits and then Command-Shift-K, risers, Command-Shift-K, undertones, and then Command-Shift-K for voiceover. Now, voiceover isn't a sound effect, so I'm going to create a new folder and call it dialogue, and I'm going to add the voiceover keyword collection there. So you can see we're a little more organized with our roles and the keyword collections that mirror those roles here in Final Cut Pro. Now, the next thing I want to update are some of my projects. You can see here I've got a project that's already set up in 4K in a 2:1 aspect ratio at 24 frames per second. That's the default timeline settings that I use for all of my YouTube videos. And then on occasion, I might want a 4K UHD 24 frames per second project, so I have that there just in case. And then I have a YouTube short, which allows me to have a vertical aspect ratio so that I can make any of my short content. But there's two things that I've been doing a lot in my YouTube videos. I've been adding effects to dialogue audio and then exporting that audio and putting it into my multicam. So I need to create a new project that allows me to add my dialogue audio, which is being recorded on this mic right here, and apply some effects to it. So I'm going to hit Command-N to do a new project, and I'm going to call it dialogue audio. And I want it in the project event. 1080, 24 frames per second is fine because it's going to be an audio file. There's not going to be a video component to it. And then I'll hit OK. So now I have that. And I need another project that allows me to make a YouTube thumbnail. Now, YouTube thumbs are 1920 by 1080. That's the recommended resolution. So that all works out fine. 24 frames per second is fine as well, since I'm just going to export a still frame. And then I can hit OK. And now every time I copy this Final Cut library template into a new YouTube video and open it, these projects are going to be ready to go so I can make a thumbnail, add effects to my dialogue audio, and export that audio. I don't have to do these two steps every time I'm making a new video. Now, next on the list, I'm going to add a new project that allows me to create this film grain background effect that I use in a lot of my videos. So Command-N to start a new project. And then I'm going to call this film grain background. And that's going to stay in projects, but I don't want it to be in 1080. I want it to be in 4K. And I want it to be just in standard UHD, 3840 by 2160 works for me. 24 frames per second works as well. So then I'm going to open that project, close my timeline index. I'm going to start building this effect. So what I do is I take solids, I pull a black, and then I add that to my timeline. And you can see here it's about 10 seconds. I'm going to double that time to 20 seconds just so that it's as long as I might need in an edit. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to elements here and I'm going to grab a shape and I'm going to add this above it by pressing Q. And then I'm going to extend this edit to the playhead by hitting Shift X. And so we have this. Over in the inspector, I'm going to deselect the outline. I'm going to drop the drop shadow opacity to 0 so it doesn't have any kind of shadow. And then I'm going to hit Shift T, Command Control 1 to remove that. And then we'll expand this, drop this to 100%. And then I'm going to use my Monogram Video Console to stretch this a little bit more. And we're basically going to create a little vignette effect. And I'm going to drop this down to 50 so I can grab the sides. Now you can do this stretching and all that stuff from the inspector. I always do it in the viewer window. And now we need to add some effects to this. So I'm going to add a Gaussian blur. We'll drop that on. And I'm going to max this out. We might shrink this down a little bit more. And then the last thing I need to do is just drop the opacity of this element. I'm going to drop it down to next to nothing, just so it has this little bright spot here in the center of the frame. Something like that. Okay? Now I need to bring my sidebar back up, so Command Control 1. And then I'm going to go into my Motion VFX M Film Matte effect to get some cool film effects. All right, so I'm going to add some film variants. I'm going to select that one, move my playhead, hit Q. Now, something I want to do before I copy this is I want to check that it animates in and out. I want to uncheck that. Now, when I go to copy, I'm going to press and hold Option, click and drag, Option, click and drag, Option, click and drag, and then I'm going to hit the right bracket on my Stream Deck Mobile to shorten that up. Next, we're going to do film grain, and we'll do the same thing. We'll drop one on, and then we'll uncheck this, and I'll show you another method. We can copy this, move the playhead to the end, Command V, Command V, Command V, and then shorten that up. So there's a couple of different ways you can add this effect and then duplicate it. And then we'll do film dirt, select it, turn the animation off, and then we'll copy this. You might be asking yourself, well, why not just stretch it out? Why not just have that effect stretched out? When you stretch out these effects, the timing of them changes, and I don't want the timing to make it look weird. So if I play this back, you can see we've got a nice film effect background. Now the last thing I need to do is put this in a compound clip. So I'm going to select it all and then hit Option G and call this film grain background. And this is going to go into my graphics folder. It's not really like a visual graphic or a motion graphic, but graphic is sort of like the place where my brain thinks this should be. Okay. So now that we have that, if you look at our graphics folder and we unselect favorites here, you can see here my compound clip is there. And now every single time I open my Final Cut library template in a new video, this is going to be there so I can use it in every video where I want to use it. And this leads to the last thing. I've got this end credits title sequence that I use in every single video, and I'm always opening up a previous Final Cut Pro library to copy and paste it in, when really I should be having it in my library template so it's available all the time. Now I don't have a previous project. Actually, I think I do. I'm going to open up my previous project, and you can see here my end credits are down here at the end. Thank you, channel members. Sound effects courtesy of Lens Distortions, color grade with Film Convert Nitrate. I use these all the time. So I'm going to go back to my main project that I'm building all this updated template stuff for, and I need to make a new project. But these titles were made in a 4K project that's in a 2:1 aspect ratio. So I need the project that I make to mirror that. So it's going to be 4K, and 2:1 is 4096 by 2048. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to open that up, which it's already open. I'm going to hit Command V, and now these are in here and ready to go in the correct aspect ratio based on what I use them for. Now, if I put these in a project that has a different aspect ratio, I'll have to move them around and adjust them, but right now these are exactly how I want it. So now when I go to edit a new video, this will be here already, ready for me to copy and paste it over without having to go back in my archives and open up an older project, and I'll be able to adjust this to whatever the video settings are for that current project. So this Final Cut Pro library template is now up to date. Now, one thing I want to do is update my Finder template, but I don't want to do that for my main channel. I want to update it for my photography channel. So for my photo videos channel, I've got a different template. Most of the folder organization is the same. The Final Cut library template is different, but I want to update my folder organization to reflect a little bit more of what I need. Now, under stills, I want to add a folder for the raw images. I want to add a folder for the selects that I make from those raw images. And then I want to add a folder called super selects so that if my selects number too high, like I don't want that many photos in my video, I need to pick the next round of selects that are going to be in my video. And then finally, a folder that reflects the edited photos. I will take those super selects, let's say there's 30 stills, I'll add them to the Photos app, and then that'll sync to the RNI Films app that I use to edit my photos. And then once I'm done editing the photos in the RNI Films app, I export them to this edited folder, and my edited JPEGs are ready to go for another video on my photography channel. Now, I have some updating to do to the Final Cut library template for my photography videos. There's a few projects that I need to set up in custom aspect ratios, things like that. I'll do that off camera, but that's going to allow me to start my photography channel videos much faster, so I'm not doing these common repetitive steps over and over again. But this is the general concept behind using templates to shorten the period from when you're done filming your video to when you actually start editing it. And it's also intended to help you optimize your organization so that you are not breaking out of the creative flow when you're editing to try to find media and assets that are scattered across your computer or a mess of external hard drives. I know this is a lot to digest, and I'm hoping that the way that I showed how I use this communicates the concepts behind using these templates. If you have any questions, please drop your questions down in the comments. I'm happy to answer them as best I can through the comments. I do have coaching sessions that I offer. If you're really interested in dialing this process, you can view those coaching sessions on my website. I'll have a link to that down in the description. If that's something that you think would be helpful, I'm happy to do a coaching session over Zoom. We can share your screen, all of that stuff to help get you up to speed with this workflow. Now, if you want to purchase my templates, they're available on my website. You can buy the Final Cut Pro library template all by itself for $10. You can buy the Finder template, the Finder folder template, all by itself for $10. Or you can buy my bundle. I've got a Final Cut Pro library template for horizontal, for landscape content. I've got a Final Cut Pro library template for shorts content, vertical content, and then of course the Finder folder template. All three of those you can buy for $25. I've sold a lot of these over the years since I created them as a digital product, and I have had a lot of viewers of the channel who have been really happy with how much faster they are with getting a video started because of the organization and the simplicity of using templates. Now, I don't expect you to use my exact template structure. Get in there and customize it to how your brain works, to the ways that you see organization, to the terminology that you use for media, for film, video, stills, all that stuff. I've been using these templates for years, and I'm still making changes to them every few months to reflect how my workflow is changing. That's all I've got for this one, everyone. Until the next video, I will see you soon. Don't forget, keep chopping that broccoli.